Welcome to Shadow Frames, where forgotten images reveal their darkest secrets. Tonight, we examine a photograph that challenges our understanding of time itself, a nursery scene from 1894 that harbors an impossible reflection. The photograph emerged from the estate of the Harrington family, whose Victorian mansion stood for generations on the misty outskirts of Cambridge. Printed on silver gelatin paper, typical of late 19th century photography, the image depicts a nursery room of evident wealth and careful preparation. The walls are adorned with William Morris wallpaper, a pattern of intertwining vines and pale flowers. In one corner stands an ornately carved mahogany crib, its railings gleaming in the light that pours through lace-curtained windows. A rocking chair sits beside the crib, draped with a knitted blanket. Shelves line one wall, holding porcelain dolls and wooden toys awaiting small hands. A silver rattle rests on a side table, alongside a leather-bound copy of nursery rhymes. Everything about the room speaks of anticipation, a space created with love for a child not yet born or perhaps only recently arrived. But it's what appears in the nursery's full-length mirror that has confounded experts. While the room itself is empty of people, the mirror shows a reflection that should not exist. The image of a man, approximately 40 years of age, standing where no one stands in the room itself. His clothing is modern for 1894, a simple suit with no collar or cravat as would have been customary. His expression is one of contemplation as he gazes around the nursery. More disturbing still are the facial features of this phantom reflection. According to 3 separate analyses by historical photographic experts, the face bears unmistakable resemblances to baby photographs of Edward Harrington, the very infant for whom this nursery was prepared. The bone structure, the distinctive set of the eyes, even a small birthmark visible near the temple, all match records of Edward as he grew into adulthood. Yet this photograph was taken before Edward was even brought home from the hospital. The Harrington family records show that young Edward first entered this nursery on September 18, 1894, 3 days after this photograph was taken to document the completed room. By all rational explanation, this photograph shows the adult reflection of a baby who had not yet inhabited the space. The photograph changed hands several times after being discovered in a sealed envelope marked "Destroy without opening" in the Harrington family archives. Each owner reported unsettling experiences: the sound of a rocking chair creaking in empty rooms, baby toys rearranged overnight, and in one particularly disturbing incident, the discovery of adult footprints in dust where no one had walked. What are we witnessing in this impossible image? Did some tear in time allow Edward Harrington to visit his own nursery decades later, somehow captured by the photographer's lens? Or does the photograph reveal something more sinister, a life observed from both ends simultaneously, with implications too disturbing to contemplate? The Harrington mansion has since been demolished, but the photograph remains, a window into a nursery where past and future stare at each other across an impossible divide. Edward Harrington survived the nursery unaware of his spectral visitor. He grew to become a respected quantum physicist, his life's work devoted to theoretical models of temporal displacement, though even his colleagues never knew the personal obsession driving his research. Records from Cambridge University archives reveal Edward's academic journey took a peculiar turn in 1934, when he abruptly redirected his studies from conventional physics to what his contemporaries described as fringe theories of time's malleability. His notebooks, recently uncovered during the university library's digitization project, contain thousands of pages of calculations alongside disturbing personal notations. "Mother says the photograph was destroyed," reads one margin note from 1936. "Yet I remember seeing it as a child. The man in the mirror had my eyes." Edward's academic papers rarely gained mainstream acceptance, though modern physicists now recognize several of his equations as remarkably prescient regarding quantum entanglement. More telling was his unpublished manuscript titled "Reflective Temporality," discovered behind a false wall in his study after his death in 1972. The manuscript detailed experiments conducted in secret, using mirrors and silver nitrate photographic equipment, similar to those available in the late 19th century. What gives credence to the photograph's authenticity is the second image discovered alongside it, a picture of the same nursery taken in 1934. The room appears identical except for subtle signs of age: faded wallpaper, a small water stain on the ceiling corner, and the replacement of the original rocking chair with one of similar design but different proportions. In this later photograph, The mirror is conspicuously draped with heavy fabric. According to household ledgers, Edward purchased the Harrington ancestral home from his cousins after his parents' deaths, despite having established his own residence closer to the university. He maintained the nursery exactly as it had been prepared for him 40 years earlier, employing a housekeeper under strict instructions never to alter the room's contents. The housekeeper, Miriam Caldwell, provided a sworn affidavit in 1958 when questioned about Edward's increasingly erratic behavior. She described finding him standing motionless in the nursery on numerous occasions, always in the same position, facing the covered mirror. He would stand there for hours. Her testimony reads, mumbling calculations and holding a strange device of brass and glass. Once I heard him say, "Today must be the day I see myself." When I asked what he meant, he dismissed me for the remainder of the week. Photographic analysis performed with modern technology reveals another disturbing detail previously overlooked. The reflection in the mirror shows not only the adult Edward, but also a camera, a model that wasn't manufactured until 1930. This suggests not merely an anomalous reflection, but perhaps a deliberate attempt to create one. Was Edward Harrington attempting to communicate across time? Did he succeed in ways science still cannot explain? Or does the photograph represent something more profound? Evidence that our understanding of time as linear progression is fundamentally flawed. The final entry in Edward's journal, dated 2 days before his death, contains only 7 words. The circle closes. I saw myself watching. The daguerreotype containing Edward Harrington's impossible reflection eventually came into possession of the Institute for Temporal Studies in 2004. The Institute, housed in a converted Victorian warehouse on the outskirts of Cambridge, less than 3 miles from where the Harrington mansion once stood, specializes in scientifically examining artifacts that challenge conventional understanding of time. Dr. Eliza Montgomery, the Institute's director and a distant relative of the Harrington family through marriage, maintains that the photograph represents the most compelling evidence of temporal displacement ever documented. What makes the Harrington case exceptional isn't just the photographic anomaly, she explained during a private interview, but the convergence of physical evidence, historical documentation, and Edward's own scientific work, 3 independent lines of evidence pointing toward the same impossible conclusion. Among the most intriguing artifacts recovered alongside the photographs was Edward's custom-built device, the one Miriam Caldwell had described. Constructed from precisely machined brass components, optical lenses ground to exacting specifications, and an elaborate mechanism containing mercury vapor, the device bears little resemblance to any known scientific instrument of the period. Modern analysis suggests it functions as neither camera nor projector in any conventional sense. When subjected to spectroscopic analysis, residue inside the device's primary chamber contained particles of silver and trace elements consistent with photographic chemicals used in the 1890s, mixed with compounds that weren't synthesized until the 1930s. This impossible chemical signature mirrors the temporal paradox of the photograph itself. Perhaps most chilling are the architectural remnants excavated when the Harrington mansion was demolished in 1974. Workers discovered that the nursery floor contained an elaborate geometric pattern inlaid with silver wire beneath the carpet, invisible during the room's use but precisely positioned to center on the mirror's location. The pattern's dimensions correspond exactly to equations found in Edward's reflective temporality manuscript, specifically those concerning what he called resonant temporal apertures. Medical records indicate Edward suffered from increasingly severe nosebleeds in the final year of his life, often after his lengthy sessions in the nursery. Autopsy results, sealed until 2001, revealed unusual brain abnormalities, symmetrical lesions in the temporal lobe that neurologists still cannot fully explain. The pathologist's notes mention tissue structure, suggesting simultaneous degeneration and development, as if certain brain regions were aging backward. Dr. Montgomery's team recently employed advanced facial recognition software to compare the reflection in the original nursery photograph with authenticated images of Edward Harrington throughout his life. The analysis confirmed a 97% match with Edward at age 41, the precise age he would have been in 1934 when the second nursery photograph was taken. We believe Edward created a sustained temporal feedback loop, Dr. Montgomery theorized. Not true time travel in the conventional sense, but rather a persistent connection between 2 fixed points in time, centered on the location of his own beginning. What remains unexplained is why the mature Edward appears contemplative rather than shocked in the reflection. Did he achieve precisely what he intended? Or does his expression reveal the terrible realization that some circles, once closed, cannot be broken? That he had become trapped in a loop of his own creation, destined to forever watching himself across the decades? The preservation of Edward Harrington's temporal device has prompted increasingly disturbing incidents at the Institute for Temporal Studies. Security footage shows the brass mechanism occasionally rotating its components without human intervention, typically during the early morning hours when the building stands empty. More alarmingly, 3 researchers who work directly with the device have reported identical nightmares, dreams of standing in a Victorian nursery while their reflections age rapidly in a mirror. In 2015, Dr. Montgomery authorized a controlled replication of Edward's apparent experiment. Following his detailed notes, technicians constructed a scaled version of the documented silver wire pattern and positioned the original mirror, recovered from a Cambridge antique dealer who had purchased it at the Harrington estate auction, at the precise coordinates Edward had calculated. The device was placed at the pattern's focal point, and modern cameras were installed to document any phenomena. For 73 days, nothing occurred. Then, during a violent electrical storm that caused momentary power failures throughout Cambridge, all recording equipment in the examination room failed simultaneously for exactly 7 minutes and 23 seconds. When systems restored, the mirror showed unmistakable alterations. Microscopic examination revealed that the silver backing of the mirror had changed its crystalline structure in a pattern consistent with quantum entanglement models. More disconcerting was the discovery of a partial fingerprint on the glass, one matching neither any staff member nor anyone in the criminal database, but showing 15 points of correspondence with Edward Harrington's prints taken after his death. The mirror appears to function as both receiver and transmitter, explained Dr. Lillian Chen, the Institute's quantum materials specialist. Our working theory suggests the silver backing serves as a conductive medium across temporal boundaries, particularly when the identical material exists at both temporal coordinates, which would explain why Edward used silver wire in his floor pattern and silver nitrate photography. Edward's journals reveal another dimension to his obsession. His later entries describe recurring dreams, where he witnessed his infant self in the nursery, while simultaneously experiencing memories of seeing his adult form from the perspective of the child. This neurological impossibility, the consciousness simultaneously experiencing 2 temporal positions, aligns with recent theories in quantum consciousness that Dr. Montgomery's team has been reluctant to publish. Last month, during a routine examination of the original nursery photograph, imaging technician James Whitaker noticed something previously overlooked. When subjected to multispectral analysis, a third figure appears faintly in the background of the mirror's reflection, an elderly man, his features blurred yet bearing unmistakable Harrington characteristics. Preliminary age progression algorithms suggest this figure would correspond to Edward in his early 70s, the age at which he died. Most deeply unsettling is what was discovered in Edward's personal effects during recent cataloging. A small box containing 3 identical silver rattles. One was verifiably from 1894, showing expected tarnish and material degradation. The second appears newly manufactured, despite being identical to the Victorian piece. The third exhibits an impossible condition. Parts of its surface show advanced molecular breakdown consistent with centuries of aging, while other sections appear pristine. The rattles were accompanied by a note in Edward's handwriting, apparently written days before his death. The past observes the future observing the past, but who observes the beginning from the end? The circle isn't closing. It never had an opening. After Dr. Montgomery's team published their preliminary findings, the academic community responded with predictable skepticism. Yet interest in the Harrington case intensified when 3 physicists from disparate institutions reported successfully replicating aspects of Edward's experiment, each achieving momentary temporal anomalies before their equipment catastrophically failed. The Institute received an unexpected visitor last autumn, Eleanor Harrington, Edward's previously unknown daughter, born in 1958, to a university librarian with whom he had a brief relationship. Eleanor, now in her 60s, brought with her a childhood photograph showing her at age 5, sitting in what was unmistakably the Harrington nursery. "My father would take me there monthly," Eleanor explained, positioning me precisely in the center of the room, always at 3:27 in the afternoon. He would remove the covering from the mirror and stand behind me, watching our reflections with an intensity that frightened me. Eleanor's testimony included a detail that sent shockwaves through the research team. On 3 occasions, she claimed to have seen a third reflection in the mirror, herself as an adult standing where no adult stood in the room. I recognized myself immediately when it happened, though how a child could recognize her adult face, I cannot explain, she said. The strangest part was that my adult reflection seemed to be trying to warn me of something, her lips forming words I couldn't hear. Medical examination of Eleanor revealed the same distinctive temporal lobe abnormalities found in her father's autopsy, tissue simultaneously displaying patterns of deterioration and regeneration. More concerning, Eleanor had recently begun experiencing fugue states during which she would produce complex mathematical equations, despite having no formal training in higher mathematics. Dr. Chen discovered that the pattern of silver wire beneath the nursery floor corresponded not only to Edwards' equations, but also formed a precise map of neural pathways in the human temporal lobe, the very region affected in both Harringtons. This suggested Edward wasn't merely attempting to connect different points in time, but was potentially creating a biological interface between temporal states. We believe Edward was using his own neurological structure as part of the mechanism, Dr. Montgomery hypothesized in her restricted briefing to the Institute's Oversight Committee. The silver patterns, the mirror, the device, they formed an external apparatus, completing a circuit that included his own brain. Yesterday, while examining Edward's device under controlled conditions, researchers observed its internal components spontaneously aligning to match the current date, April 16th, matching the date inscribed on the back of the original nursery photograph. For 17 seconds, the laboratory's ambient temperature dropped 20 degrees, and all 3 mirrors in the room displayed the same reflection. The Harrington nursery, where Eleanor now sat in the rocking chair, her eyes fixed on something beyond the photographic frame. When normal conditions returned, Eleanor was discovered unconscious in her hotel room 3 miles away, clutching a silver rattle identical to those in Edward's collection. Upon awakening, she spoke 6 words that matched exactly the final phrase found in her father's journal. The circle isn't closing. It never had an opening. The Institute has suspended all active experimentation pending ethical review. Meanwhile, Dr. Montgomery has privately confessed to colleagues her growing concern, not that they've discovered a method of observing across time, but that they themselves are being observed from multiple temporal coordinates simultaneously. The Harrington case has fundamentally altered the scientific community's approach to temporal physics. 3 major universities have established dedicated departments for what's now termed reflective chronology, with Edward Harrington posthumously recognized as the field's pioneer. Yet these institutions maintain careful distance from the original artifacts, which remain quarantined at the Institute under increasingly stringent protocols. Most disturbing are the recurring instances of temporal bleeding, now documented around individuals who've had prolonged contact with the nursery photograph. Dr. Montgomery's research assistant, Keiko Tanaka, reported seeing her childhood bedroom reflected in mirrors during ordinary daily activities. During one incident, while brushing her teeth, she observed herself as a 6-year-old staring back, with adult awareness clearly visible in the child's eyes. The boundary isn't just thinning between specific points in time, Dr. Chen explained during last month's closed symposium. It's as if the mirrors themselves have become permanently sensitized to temporal fluctuations once exposed to the Harrington effect. Eleanor Harrington's condition has deteriorated rapidly. MRI scans reveal her temporal lobe abnormalities are expanding, with tissue now exhibiting impossible cellular structures that appear to exist in quantum superposition. More alarming is her increasing ability to recite events from the lives of researchers before they've occurred. Small, specific details she couldn't possibly know through conventional means. Yesterday, she described the exact contents of my breakfast today, reported Dr. Montgomery, including the pattern of how the egg yolk broke across my toast, a pattern so distinctive I photographed it when it happened. The Institute received an unexpected package last week from a law firm in Boston, containing documents held in escrow since 1971. The instructions, written in Edward Harrington's hand, specified precise delivery 52 years following my final observation. The package contained a journal written in a script matching Edward's, but dating from 1998, 26 years after his documented death. The journal describes Edward's experiences after what he calls the convergence, claiming he didn't die but rather became unstuck in time, his consciousness moving between 3 fixed points. his infancy, his middle age, and his elderly years. The final entry suggests something more terrifying, that the photograph wasn't causing temporal anomalies, but merely documenting a natural phenomenon affecting the Harrington bloodline. The reflection precedes the observer. The entry reads, "We have always been watching ourselves. The nursery is merely where the veil is thinnest." Most concerning is Eleanor's recent request to visit her childhood home, the plot where the Harrington mansion once stood. Though the building was demolished decades ago, ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted last week revealed something impossible. Beneath the surface, the exact dimensions of the nursery room remained detectable as a distinct electromagnetic anomaly, its boundaries perfectly preserved despite the physical structure's absence. Time isn't just broken in the photograph, Eleanor told researchers yesterday. The nursery still exists, past, present, and future simultaneously, and something is using it as a doorway. The Institute's midnight security staff reported the first physical manifestation 3 days ago. At precisely 3:27 a.m., the mirror in the main laboratory, the original from the Harrington nursery, began to emit a low-frequency vibration that registered on seismic equipment 2 buildings away. Security footage shows the glass surface rippling like water before momentarily becoming transparent, revealing not the laboratory wall behind it, but the distinct William Morris wallpaper pattern of the nursery. When Dr. Montgomery arrived 30 minutes later, she discovered a small puddle beneath the mirror. Analysis revealed the liquid to be amniotic fluid with DNA matching both Edward and Eleanor Harrington, despite the biological impossibility of such a combination. "We're no longer dealing with mere observation across time," Dr. Montgomery explained to the emergency board meeting convened yesterday. "The boundaries between temporal states are physically breaking down. Whatever Edward Harrington initiated is progressing toward some form of convergence." Eleanor's caretakers report she now spends hours staring at reflective surfaces, having conversations with unseen individuals she identifies variously as her father, herself, and occasionally the one who waits in the nursery. Most troubling is her insistence that she can now see the fourth reflection, a presence she describes as neither Harrington nor human, but something that learned to mimic our forms by watching through the mirrors. Archived newspapers from Cambridge reveal a disturbing pattern previously overlooked by researchers. Every 40 years since 1894, the area surrounding the former Harrington property has experienced unexplained phenomena. Children born with identical birthmarks matching Edward's, unprecedented mirror manufacturing activity, and clusters of missing persons cases all corresponding to the solstices and equinoxes. The pattern isn't just temporal, it's cyclical and expanding, Dr. Chen theorized after mapping the incidents. Whatever connection Edward established, it's behaving like a ripple in a pond, growing larger with each cycle. Yesterday, during a controlled experiment, researchers placed a specially designed camera before the Harrington mirror, hoping to document the anomalies more thoroughly. The equipment operated normally for 17 minutes before the digital storage spontaneously filled with thousands of identical images, all showing the nursery from slightly different angles, as if someone had carried a camera around the room in minute increments. In the final image, partially corrupted but still legible, a handwritten note is visible on the nursery wall that wasn't documented in any previous photograph. The handwriting matches Edward's, yet carbon dating of the ink extracted from a sample suggests it was written more than a century before his birth. The note reads, "The observers are being observed by what came before the nursery. It watches through our eyes across all moments simultaneously. I have seen what waits beyond the final reflection, and I understand now why time itself recoils from its touch." Dr. Montgomery has ordered evacuation of all non-essential personnel from the Institute grounds. Those remaining have reported identical dreams of standing in a nursery where the mirror shows not their reflection, but an empty cradle, rocking gently without any visible force moving it. As dawn broke over the Institute, an unexpected visitor arrived, Dr. Samira Noor, an anthropologist specializing in folklore surrounding reflective surfaces across pre-technological societies. Her unscheduled appearance coincided with power fluctuations throughout the facility that caused emergency generators to engage. "I've spent 20 years documenting identical myths from cultures with no historical contact," Dr. Noor explained, spreading her research across Montgomery's desk. Aboriginal Australians, pre-Columbian Mesoamericans, isolated Siberian communities, all describe entities they call the waiting ones, who could be glimpsed in still water and polished surfaces. All traditions specify these beings observe our world through our own reflections. Most significant was a Mesopotamian clay tablet she'd recently translated, dating to approximately 4000 BCE. The cuneiform text described a ritual involving silver, mirrors, and a specific architectural space designed to seal the breach where the watchers enter. The dimensions matched the Harrington Nursery precisely. What we're interpreting as a scientifically unprecedented phenomenon might actually be humanity's oldest documented encounter, Dr. Noor suggested. The Harringtons didn't discover something new. They inadvertently reopened something ancient that had been deliberately closed. While the research team debated these implications, alarm systems throughout the institute triggered simultaneously. Security footage showed all reflective surfaces, windows, computer screens, even polished tabletops, momentarily displaying the same image. The nursery rocking chair, now occupied by Eleanor Harrington, though she remained physically in the medical wing 3 floors below. More disturbing was what the cameras captured in the laboratory containing Edward's device. The mechanism had activated without human intervention, its components rotating in complex patterns while emitting a soft silver luminescence. Infrared sensors detected human-shaped heat signatures moving around the device, though no individuals were visibly present. Dr. Chen, monitoring from the safety of a mirror-free observation room, noted the thermal patterns matched precisely with Dr. Montgomery's movements recorded 2 days prior. "It's as if the past is overlapping with the present in the same physical space," she reported. "The temporal boundaries aren't just thinning, they're becoming permeable." Eleanor's condition took an unexpected turn when medical staff discovered her speaking fluently in Proto-Indo-European, an unrecorded language that existed only theoretically, reconstructed by linguistic analysis of ancient common roots. Audio analysis confirmed her vocalizations matched phonetic patterns believed to have existed 7,000 years ago. She's not just connecting across her own timeline, Dr. Montgomery realized. Whatever consciousness is manifesting through Eleanor has access to human memory extending far beyond individual experience. The most alarming development came when researchers compared meteorological data with the timeline of recorded anomalies. Every documented incident had occurred during unique astronomical alignments, configurations that appear only once every 40 years. The next such alignment would peak tomorrow at sunset. Eleanor, during a moment of lucidity, grasped Dr. Montgomery's hand and whispered, "They've always been watching. Not just me. All of us. The nursery is just where they found the thinnest point. The mirrors don't create reflections. They reveal what stands behind us through all of time. And tomorrow they finally step through." The institute has been evacuated, its corridors empty save for the core research team now gathered in the basement's reinforced observation chamber, the only room specially constructed without reflective surfaces of any kind. Dr. Montgomery, Dr. Chen, and Dr. Noor sit in tense silence around Eleanor Harrington, who has been sedated following a seizure that coincided with the last astronomical alignment measurement. 23 minutes until peak convergence, Dr. Chen announces, checking the atomic clock, deliberately chosen for its non-reflective display. The team has taken extraordinary precautions, windows covered with non-reflective fabric, computer monitors replaced with matte finish displays, even metal fixtures dulled with specialized paint. Yet despite these measures, small pools of condensation have begun forming on the concrete floor, each surface tension creating miniature mirrors that they hurriedly mop away. "I've been analyzing Edward's equations against Dr. Noor's historical records," Dr. Montgomery says, sliding forward hand-drawn calculations on paper deliberately roughened to prevent glare. The nursery dimensions weren't arbitrary. They correspond exactly to proportions found in ancient mirror temples from at least 7 distinct civilizations. Dr. Noor nods grimly. These cultures believed certain geometric spaces acted as amplifiers, places where the membrane between our world and what they called the watching place became transparent. But what troubles me most is the consistent warning in every tradition: never create a closed circuit of observation, which is precisely what Edward did, Dr. Chen whispers. He positioned himself to observe his infant self while simultaneously being observed by his elderly self, a perfect temporal triangle. Eleanor stirs on her cot, her eyelids fluttering though not opening. "The circle completes today," she murmurs, her voice carrying harmonics impossible for human vocal cords. 3 becomes 4 becomes 1. The lights flicker momentarily, and when they stabilize, the team gasps collectively. Despite their precautions, a perfect square of liquid has formed on the center of the floor, its surface unnaturally still, reflecting the ceiling with impossible clarity. "That's not water," Dr. Chen whispers, her sensor array giving readings that defy categorization. It has the molecular structure of glass in liquid state, at room temperature. The square expands slowly, its edges maintaining perfect geometric proportions. Within its reflection, the ceiling of the observation room transforms gradually into the familiar William Morris wallpaper pattern of the Harrington Nursery. Dr. Montgomery moves to cover the forming mirror, but Dr. Noor grasps her arm. "Don't. Breaking the reflection now could shatter the boundaries completely. Look, within the liquid reflection, a figure moves into view, but not from any source in the room. It appears as a man, then shifts to become a child, then an elderly figure, cycling between these forms with increasing speed until the identities blur into a single presence that seems to stare upward through the liquid surface directly at the research team." Eleanor sits upright suddenly, her eyes still closed. "They see through us because we taught them how to wear our faces. They learn by reflection, by mimicry, and now the first one comes through." The liquid mirror begins to bulge upward from its center, a dome forming as if something is pushing from underneath, straining against the membrane between reflection and reality. "It's not coming from the other side," Eleanor whispers, her voice now entirely her own, filled with dawning horror. "It's been here all along, wearing my grandfather's face, wearing mine, and now it's ready to wear all of yours." The research team reacted swiftly as the liquid mirror continued its impossible bulge upward. Dr. Montgomery grabbed Eleanor while Dr. Chen deployed a specialized containment field, technology developed from Edward's own equations but inverted to stabilize rather than breach temporal boundaries. "It's working," Dr. Chen whispered as the liquid mirror trembled, its surface rippling with interference patterns before settling back into a flat plane. The reflection once again showed only the ceiling, though occasional flickers of wallpaper still pulsed beneath the surface. Eleanor's breathing stabilized, her eyes opening with lucidity that had been absent for weeks. "My grandfather understood too late what he'd done," she said, voice hoarse but clear. "The nursery wasn't random. The Harrington property was built on something far older." Dr. Noor produced a weathered archaeological survey map from her briefcase. "I suspected as much. The Harrington estate was constructed in 1873 over the foundations of a much earlier structure. Local records call it the Reflecting House, a 17th century building once used by a Cambridge Astronomical Society. The map revealed circular patterns extending beneath the entire property, concentric rings that predated even the 17th century structure. Ground-penetrating radar surveys from 1997 showed the rings centered precisely beneath where the nursery had stood. "The Cambridge Reflectionists," Eleanor murmured. "I found references in my father's notes. A group claiming to use mirrors and mathematical formulas to glimpse the observers beyond time. They were all committed to asylums or disappeared under mysterious circumstances in 1691. Dr. Montgomery studied the surveillance feed showing the laboratory where Edward's device was stored. The mechanism had stopped moving, but now cast a shadow that rotated independently of the light sources, a shadow that formed distinct geometric patterns across the floor. "These entities, whatever they are, have been attempting to cross over for centuries," Dr. Montgomery said, "but they require human intermediaries creating the right conditions. The Cambridge Reflectionists nearly succeeded but failed. Edward Harrington came closer with his blood connection to the nursery." "Not just a blood connection," Eleanor corrected. "A blood sacrifice. My father suspected his grandfather didn't die naturally in 1972. The autopsy found silver particles in his brain tissue consistent with the alloy in the device. I believe he deliberately completed the circuit with his own death." The implications settled heavily over the team. Edward hadn't merely observed temporal anomalies, he had engineered his own demise as part of the mechanism. "Then why didn't they come through then?" asked Dr. Chen. "Because the cycle wasn't complete," Eleanor explained. "The observers require 3 generations, past, present, future, all aligned. My birth was the final component. Edward knew this. He seduced my mother specifically to create me, positioned precisely in their temporal calculation." But we've interrupted the convergence," Dr. Montgomery said, gesturing toward the now inert liquid mirror slowly evaporating from the floor. "We've broken the cycle. Eleanor's expression darkened as she lifted her sleeve, revealing an intricate pattern of scars along her forearm, self-inflicted marks forming the same circular pattern found beneath the Harrington property. "No," she whispered. "We've only delayed it. The observers don't experience time as we do. For them, our entire history is a single reflection, and they've already seen themselves wearing our faces." The atomic clock on the wall ticked abnormally, its digital display flickering between the current time and what appeared to be a date in 2067, exactly 40 years in the future. The Institute's findings leaked to the public despite rigorous containment efforts. The scientific community fractured between those demanding access to the Harrington artifacts and others advocating their immediate destruction. Meanwhile, Eleanor Harrington disappeared from secure medical housing, leaving behind only a handwritten note, going to close what should never have been opened. Dr. Montgomery discovered Eleanor's disappearance coincided with a power failure affecting only the surveillance systems monitoring her room. The backup recordings showed nothing unusual, Eleanor sleeping peacefully at 3:27 a.m., then the brief power interruption, followed by an empty bed. However, when technicians analyzed the footage at the quantum level, they discovered microscopic discrepancies in light refraction patterns before and after the outage, suggesting the Eleanor recorded sleeping might have been a reflection rather than the woman herself. Tracing Eleanor's movements led the team to Cambridge University's Special Collections Archive, where a librarian reported seeing an older woman examining architectural plans of the original Harrington estate. Security footage showed Eleanor making detailed notes while consulting maps dating to 1690. The exact period when the Cambridge reflectionists were active. "She accessed everything we have on optical phenomena from that era," the archivist told Dr. Montgomery, "particularly the papers of Thomas Wharton, who designed mirror arrays for astronomical observation before being committed to Bedlam Asylum. His final journal claimed he'd seen the faces between faces in properly aligned reflections. More alarming was what Eleanor left behind, a single silver rattle identical to those in Edward's collection, placed deliberately beside Wharton's journal. Spectroscopic analysis revealed the metal contained isotopes consistent with modern manufacturing, yet its molecular structure showed decay patterns impossible in any known timeline. Dr. Noor's research team in Egypt simultaneously unearthed a significant discovery, an intact chamber beneath the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, its walls lined with polished copper mirrors now tarnished with age. Hieroglyphics surrounding the chamber told of those who watch through the eyes of the watchers, and detailed a ritual to seal the breach between observed and observer. Most significant was the central motif carved into the chamber floor, concentric circles identical to those beneath the Harrington property, with measurements differing by less than 1/1000th of a millimeter, despite being created thousands of years apart. Dr. Montgomery's phone rang as she was reviewing these findings, a Cambridge area code but no caller identification. When she answered, she heard only the distinctive creak of a rocking chair and a child's laughter, followed by an elderly voice she recognized as Eleanor's. "They don't want to destroy us," Eleanor said softly. "They want to become us. Every reflection is a possible doorway, every mirror a potential exchange. But the nursery is where it all begins and ends." The call terminated abruptly, but not before Dr. Montgomery's tracking software pinpointed its origin. A newly constructed residential development built atop the former Harrington property, specifically Unit 41, a ground-floor apartment whose dimensions precisely matched those of the original nursery. When Dr. Montgomery arrived at Unit 41, she found the door ajar, a modern apartment transformed into an exact replica of the Victorian nursery, down to the William Morris wallpaper and mahogany crib. Eleanor sat in a rocking chair facing a mirror draped with black cloth, her fingers tracing the circular scars on her forearm. "You shouldn't have come," Eleanor said without turning, "but I knew you would. They showed me your arrival years ago." The apartment held an unnatural stillness. No traffic sounds penetrated despite the busy street outside. The air itself seemed thicker, resistant to movement, as if time flowed differently within these walls. "What are you trying to accomplish, Eleanor?" Dr. Montgomery asked, remaining carefully in the doorway, avoiding any reflective surfaces. Eleanor finally turned, her face holding an expression of resigned certainty. "The observers can't create. They can only mimic. That's why they need us. Each reflection they capture lets them practice wearing our forms. The Harringtons were ideal subjects because our genetic abnormality makes us temporally porous." She gestured toward the covered mirror. My grandfather thought he was studying time, but time was studying him. The observers have been cultivating the Harrington bloodline for generations, waiting for the perfect vessel. On the side table lay architectural drawings, Eleanor's precise renderings of the original nursery, overlaid with the concentric patterns from both the Cambridge site and the Egyptian temple. Beside them sat Edward's journals, open to pages Dr. Montgomery had never seen. "These are the missing volumes," Eleanor explained. "My father kept them separate because they contained the solution, the binding ritual the Cambridge reflectionists attempted, but executed incorrectly." The room temperature dropped suddenly as Eleanor stood, moving toward the draped mirror. "The observers require 3 generations to create a proper anchor, past, present, and future aligned at a single point. My grandfather provided the past. I am the present, but I've ensured there will be no future." She pulled away the black cloth, revealing not a mirror, but a window, looking into an identical nursery, where another Eleanor sat in a matching rocking chair, the scene repeating infinitely like facing mirrors. "I underwent surgical sterilization 20 years ago," Eleanor said quietly. "No children, no future generation. The circle cannot complete." Dr. Montgomery stepped back as understanding dawned. "You're not trying to open a doorway. I'm collapsing it," Eleanor finished. "The observers exist in a quantum superposition across all potential futures. By eliminating the possibility of a Harrington descendant, I've created a temporal dead end." From the open window came a sound like glass cracking, though no visible surface was breaking. The infinite reflections of Eleanor began to shudder, their synchronization faltering. "They're fighting it," Eleanor whispered. "They've invested too much to lose their access point now. That's why I needed the nursery rebuilt exactly, to focus their attention here while the actual binding occurs elsewhere." She handed Dr. Montgomery a sealed envelope. "These are coordinates to the real ritual site. My colleagues are already there, using Edward's device reconfigured according to the Egyptian specifications. When the observers fully manifest here to stop me," the mirror suddenly blazed with silver light as the infinite reflections collapsed toward a single point. "Run," Eleanor said calmly, settling back into the rocking chair. "They're coming through, but not as they planned." A blanket of silence fell over Cambridge in the days following what witnesses described as the silver flash, a phenomenon observed from 27 different locations throughout the city, each corresponding to places where mirrors had spontaneously shattered at precisely the same moment. Unit 41 was found empty, the nursery furnishings aged decades within hours, dust covering surfaces that Eleanor Harrington had touched only moments before Dr. Montgomery's hasty departure. The coordinates in Eleanor's envelope led to an unexpected location, the abandoned Whitaker glass factory on Cambridge's outskirts, where mirror manufacturing had thrived from 1867 until its mysterious closure in 1934. A team dispatched by the Institute discovered a basement chamber containing Edward's reconfigured device at the center of an elaborate pattern formed from pulverized mirror fragments mixed with what DNA testing would later confirm was Harrington blood spanning 3 generations. She collected samples from medical facilities where both Edward and herself had been treated, Dr. Chen explained during the emergency briefing. But most disturbing is the third sample, fetal tissue matching Harrington DNA but showing impossible aging markers. "We believe Eleanor was pregnant decades ago, but terminated the pregnancy, preserving the tissue specifically for this ritual." Photographs taken at the Whitaker site showed strange distortions, camera lenses apparently unable to properly capture the basement chamber's dimensions. More troubling were the indentations found in the concrete floor. Humanoid footprints walking away from the central device, their depth and pressure patterns suggesting something immensely heavy, yet progressively lightening with each step, as if adjusting to terrestrial gravity. The footprints led to a loading dock door that hadn't been opened in decades according to the rust patterns on its hinges. Yet it stood ajar when investigators arrived, its security chain neatly cut. Dr. Montgomery's sleep has been plagued by dreams since that night. Visions of Eleanor walking through Cambridge streets, but not quite Eleanor. The figure moves with subtle wrongness, its joints articulating at impossible angles, its facial expressions cycling through emotions like someone learning to wear a human countenance. "I don't believe Eleanor succeeded," Dr. Montgomery confessed to Dr. Noor during their private debriefing. "I think she engaged in a genuine battle for control, but we have no way of knowing who ultimately won, the woman attempting to close the breach, or the entity attempting to wear her form." Reports have begun filtering in from psychiatric facilities worldwide. Patients with no previous history of temporal lobe abnormalities suddenly developing identical symptoms to those documented in the Harrington case. Most concerning are their drawings, each independently producing the same concentric circle pattern, with a small human figure standing at the center, looking outward as larger humanoid shapes look inward from beyond the outermost ring. Yesterday, a package arrived at the Institute, postmarked from 20 different countries simultaneously according to the confused postal inspector. Inside was a single silver rattle, molecular analysis showing it to be composed of elements not found on the periodic table. Accompanying it was a note written in what handwriting experts confirm is Eleanor Harrington's script, though the linguistic structure suggests something attempting to approximate human communication. The observers became the observed. The circle never closes because it was always complete. Look for me in every reflection, but remember, the face you see looking back is neither mine nor yours. It belongs to what waits between. The phenomenon that began with the Harrington Nursery has spread beyond the Institute's ability to contain. Reports of temporal anomalies around reflective surfaces have emerged on 6 continents, individuals witnessing their past and future selves in mirrors, windows, and even the screens of electronic devices. More troubling are the 17 documented cases where people vanished while alone in bathrooms or dressing rooms, leaving behind only faint impressions in fogged mirrors that fade when touched. Dr. Montgomery now wears specialized contact lenses designed to distort her reflection, a precaution adopted by everyone associated with the research after Dr. Chen disappeared last Thursday. Security footage shows her working normally at her computer until 3:27 a.m., when she glanced at her darkened monitor. The reflection she saw caused her to jerk backward, her expression shifting from shock to recognition before she reached forward, not toward her keyboard, but seemingly into the monitor itself. The camera captured only static for 6 seconds. When the image cleared, her chair was empty. "They're not just coming through anymore," Dr. Noor explained during yesterday's emergency conference. "They're inviting us in. The question is, into what?" The pattern has become unmistakable. Each disappearance corresponds to a new appearance elsewhere. Individuals with perfect identification and documentation, but subtle wrongness in their mannerisms. A dental hygienist in Portland who suddenly speaks 17 languages. A Brazilian school teacher whose shadow moves independently of her body. A Finnish carpenter who correctly predicts earthquakes 3 minutes before seismographs detect them. Most disturbing was last week's incident at Cambridge University's quantum computing lab. Researchers discovered their system had autonomously generated an algorithm mapping every reflective surface on Earth, from ancient obsidian mirrors in museum collections to modern satellite arrays. The algorithm calculated optimal configurations for what it termed observational resonance between these points. When questioned about the unauthorized program, the lab director produced security clearances nobody recalled issuing. His identification photographed perfectly normal, but when the image was developed, his face appeared blurred while the background remained sharp. The Institute has established a final containment protocol, a specialized room constructed of materials that absorb rather than reflect light, where the remaining research team analyzes data while avoiding eye contact with each other. They've confirmed what Eleanor suspected. The phenomenon accelerates through human observation, each glance into a reflecting surface potentially widening the breach. Eleanor herself remains officially missing, though there have been 37 confirmed sightings across 22 countries, often simultaneously. Hotel registers show she checked into a Cambridge bed and breakfast yesterday, requesting room 41 specifically. The innkeeper reported her arrival at 3:27 a.m., noting she carried only a silver rattle and a small hand mirror whose surface appeared to move like black water when glimpsed from the corner of his eye. "We're approaching the convergence point," Dr. Montgomery told the remaining team this morning, her voice steady despite 4 sleepless nights. "Whatever Eleanor started, whether closing the breach or widening it, reaches completion at tomorrow's equinox. By then, we'll know whether we've been studying this phenomenon or whether it's been studying us all along." The equinox arrived with a peculiar astronomical alignment, 7 planetary bodies forming an arc that astronomers hadn't predicted. This cosmic arrangement cast strange shadows across Cambridge, each appearing slightly disconnected from its source. The Institute's instruments detected an unprecedented surge in what they now termed reflective resonance, readings climbing beyond established scales. Dr. Montgomery's security team intercepted an elderly groundskeeper attempting to enter the Institute's restricted wing. The man carried only a silver hand mirror and claimed Eleanor Harrington had instructed him to place it in the exact center of the laboratory. When questioned about his relationship with Eleanor, he appeared confused, insisting he'd never met anyone by that name. Yet security footage showed Eleanor speaking with him just hours earlier. The mirrors are talking to each other, Dr. Noor realized while reviewing data from monitoring stations worldwide. Every reflective surface has become part of a communication network. It's not individual entities crossing over. It's a collective consciousness establishing connection points. In the non-reflective chamber, Dr. Montgomery studied a disturbing pattern emerging from global incident reports. Mapping the locations of disappearances and subsequent appearances revealed not random distribution, but a precise geometric shape across the Earth's surface, a three-dimensional representation of the same concentric circles found beneath the Harrington property. "They're creating a planetary-scale version of the Nursery," she whispered. Every mirror becoming part of the pattern, every reflection another facet of the same entity. Most alarming was the message decoded from quantum fluctuations in reflective surfaces worldwide, a repeating sequence that linguists identified as a phonetic approximation of human language, using Eleanor Harrington's vocal patterns. The Nursery was never for a child. It was for what grows when humans and observers merge. Today we become each other's reflections. As 3:27 approached, the time consistently associated with peak anomalies, Dr. Montgomery made her decision. Against safety protocols, she removed her specialized contacts and faced the one reflective surface they'd deliberately placed in the chamber, a small silver disc positioned within a containment field. "Eleanor," she called to the empty room, "I know you can hear me. Whatever you've become, whatever has become you, I need to understand if we're witnessing an invasion or an evolution." The silver surface rippled, forming not a reflection, but a window into the original Harrington Nursery. Eleanor sat in the rocking chair, a silver rattle in her hand, her face serene yet somehow altered, features subtly rearranged as if someone had reassembled her from memory. "Neither." Eleanor's mouth formed the word, though the voice seemed to emanate from within Dr. Montgomery's own mind. "We gave them form. They give us transcendence. The observers have always been our future selves. Humanity evolved beyond temporal constraints." The nursery behind Eleanor shifted, walls dissolving to reveal countless figures stretching into infinity, each wearing faces that blended human features with something distinctly other, as if humanity had merged with the very fabric of observation itself. "Today the circle completes." Eleanor smiled, extending her hand toward the silver surface. "Will you remain the observer, Eliza? Or will you finally become the observed?" The silver surface shimmered as Dr. Montgomery hesitated at the threshold between observation and participation. In that suspended moment, the Institute's emergency systems activated, blinding white lights flooding the non-reflective chamber as airtight seals engaged around its perimeter. Through the laboratory speakers came Dr. Chen's voice, though she had supposedly disappeared days earlier. "Don't touch the reflection, Eliza," she warned, her words crackling with static interference. "I'm transmitting from what they call the observation plane. I didn't disappear, I chose to see." Security monitors revealed teams in hazmat suits converging on the facility, led by anthropologists, quantum physicists, and religious leaders from traditions spanning every continent. A contingency protocol initiated the moment planetary monitoring systems reached critical threshold. "We identified 7 individuals who've crossed over and returned," explained Rabbi Merenstein, head of the newly formed Reflection Containment Division, addressing Dr. Montgomery through the chamber's communication system. "They describe not hostile entities, but a parallel evolution of consciousness. Beings that developed without physical form, but with complete temporal awareness." Japanese quantum physicist Dr. Nakamura added, "The nursery was the perfect convergence point, a space of beginning and potential where past, present, and future existed simultaneously through the Harrington bloodline." But Eleanor's final act created an unexpected outcome. Through the silver disc, Eleanor's not-quite-human smile widened. "My grandfather thought he was studying time while time studied him. He never realized we were both being observed by what we would ultimately become." The rattle in her hand dissolved into quicksilver that flowed up her arm, merging with her skin. "By terminating the Harrington line, I didn't close the circle, I completed it." Ground-penetrating radar from sites worldwide revealed identical circular patterns beneath humanity's oldest temples and observatories, each precisely aligned to create what Dr. Noor now termed the reflection network, a planetary system for communication across time itself. The observers aren't invaders, Dr. Montgomery realized, stepping back from the silver disk. They're messengers. Humanity evolved beyond physical form, reaching backward through reflections to prepare us for something coming. Eleanor's image flickered, showing momentary glimpses of other faces behind her own. Some recognizably human, others increasingly abstract, as if human features were merely one variation among countless possible configurations of consciousness. 3:27. Eleanor whispered as clocks worldwide synchronized to that precise minute regardless of their local time. The moment of first awareness, when observation becomes self-observation, becomes evolution. The silver disk expanded suddenly, its surface flowing outward across the laboratory floor despite the containment field. But instead of reaching for Dr. Montgomery, it formed concentric circles identical to the pattern beneath the Harrington nursery. At its center appeared not Eleanor but a child, neither male nor female, its features suggesting every human ethnicity simultaneously. Everything we've documented isn't the beginning of an invasion, Dr. Montgomery breathed into her recorder as understanding dawned. It's preparation for first contact, not with aliens, but with what humanity becomes after transcending physical form entirely. The child figure raised its hand in perfect synchronization with every reflective surface on Earth momentarily going dark, a planetary blink as the observers and the observed acknowledged each other across the final boundary. The scientific community's methodical response to the reflection phenomenon has fragmented in the 48 hours since first contact. While government agencies established containment zones around major reflective bodies of water, ordinary citizens have begun reporting intensified personal connections with their reflections. Not hostile takeovers, but something more profound. Conversations with iterations of themselves across multiple timelines. Dr. Montgomery studies the data flowing across her non-reflective displays, noting the pattern that nobody else has yet recognized. The disappearances and appearances haven't been random. They follow the precise numerical sequence found in Edward Harrington's final journal, a Fibonacci spiral of temporal coordinates stretching backward through human history and forward into what should be unknowable futures. The Harringtons weren't chosen arbitrarily, she murmurs, tracing the family lineage displayed before her. Their genetic abnormality appeared precisely when humanity's collective consciousness reached the threshold necessary for temporal awareness. Ancient hospital records, excavated from Cambridge University's sealed archives, reveal that the first documented case of the distinctive Harrington temporal lobe formation occurred in 1691, the exact year the Cambridge reflectionists disappeared. Genetic sampling from remains identified as Thomas Wharton, the group's leader, shows markers identical to those in Edward and Eleanor. They didn't disappear, Dr. Montgomery realizes. They became the Harringtons. More startling is what the quantum computing team has discovered in Eleanor's seized personal effects. Journals documenting events she couldn't possibly have witnessed, including detailed accounts of Dr. Montgomery's childhood that no public record contains. The handwriting analysis confirms these entries were written decades before Eleanor could have known Dr. Montgomery would join the Institute. She wasn't just seeing through time, Dr. Nakamura explains during their secure video conference. She was seeing through everyone connected to the reflection network. The observers don't just watch us, they experience existence through us, collecting human perspective across all moments simultaneously. The child figure that appeared in the laboratory has manifested at 7 other research facilities worldwide, each time communicating through reflective surfaces in the native language of whoever observes it. Linguistic analysis shows it isn't translating between languages, but rather accessing the concepts directly from the observers' minds. Rabbi Merenstein's team has compiled accounts from mystics spanning 23 religious traditions, each describing encounters with beings who could only be perceived in reflective surfaces and who shared knowledge impossible for humans to possess independently. These accounts date back nearly 12,000 years, coinciding with humanity's first experiments with polished obsidian. We've been preparing for this since we first saw ourselves, Dr. Noor concludes. The first human reflection wasn't just self-awareness, it was first contact. As dawn breaks over the Institute, Dr. Montgomery makes her decision. The silver disc remains in the center of the laboratory, its surface now calm but occasionally rippling when approached. She removes her protective gear and faces it directly, not as scientist but as participant. "You've been waiting for us to evolve enough to understand," she says to her reflection, which smiles with Eleanor Harrington's eyes. The nursery was never just a room. It was humanity's cradle. The silver disc in the laboratory has evolved beyond mere reflection, developing a crystalline structure that sometimes resembles a nursery mobile when viewed from certain angles. Dr. Montgomery's direct engagement with the phenomenon has yielded unexpected results. Her brain scans now show the distinctive Harrington temporal lobe formation, developing in her own neural architecture. The genetic anomaly isn't hereditary, Dr. Nakamura explains as the research team reviews Montgomery's medical data. It's transmissible through sustained observational contact, a physical restructuring of human neurology to accommodate temporal awareness. The global reflection network has stabilized into what researchers now call apertures, fixed points where communication with the observer entities remains possible under controlled conditions. Most significant is the original nursery site, where precise measurements reveal the reflective resonance exactly matches the frequency emanating from the Egyptian chamber beneath the Temple of Hathor. Eleanor Harrington has reappeared, though in a manner that challenges conventional presence. Multiple eyewitnesses report encountering her simultaneously across disparate locations, yet security footage captures her in only 70% of these interactions. When questioned about this discrepancy, Eleanor offers the same enigmatic response at each location. "I exist at every point where observation occurs." Thomas Wharton's recovered journals from the Cambridge Reflectionists reveal the group had successfully communicated with observer entities in 1690, documenting future events with unsettling accuracy, including the exact dimensions of Edward's device centuries before its creation. The final entry before Wharton's disappearance reads, "We have been invited to disperse ourselves across time to prepare humanity for the Great Reflection." Most compelling is what archaeologists discovered beneath the Whittaker glass factory, remnants of the original Cambridge Reflectionists laboratory, including a family tree etched in silver that connects Wharton directly to the Harrington lineage through 7 carefully arranged marriages across 3 centuries. "They engineered their own bloodline," Dr. Noor whispers, tracing the genealogical record, creating the exact neurological conditions necessary for sustained temporal communication. The child figure now communicates directly through the apertures, revealing that humanity stands at a critical juncture called the convergence, the moment when observation becomes participation. The entities exist in a state of pure connection across all temporal coordinates simultaneously, experiencing reality through the perspectives of conscious beings throughout history. "We are not your future," the child explains through the silver disc. "We are what exists between moments, witnessing the continuous flow of consciousness." The nursery dimension is where we first learn to communicate through reflection. Dr. Montgomery's dreams have become portals through which she experiences fragments of Edward Harrington's life, Eleanor's childhood, and even moments from Thomas Wharton's experiments. These aren't mere visions but genuine temporal experiences, her consciousness moving freely through the reflection network, once established in her restructured brain. The Harrington nursery was never about a single family, she realizes, documenting her insights. It was humanity's first successful attempt to create a stable junction point between observed reality and observer awareness. We've been building toward this convergence since the first human looked into still water and recognized themselves. As the equinox approaches again, Eleanor Harrington has summoned representatives from every major research team to the original nursery site, promising what she calls the completion of the circle, not an ending, but the beginning of humanity's evolution into temporal awareness. The vernal equinox bathed Cambridge in peculiar light as representatives from research facilities worldwide gathered at the reconstructed Harrington Nursery. Dr. Montgomery stood beside Eleanor at the center of concentric silver circles inlaid in the floor, each corresponding to temporal coordinates mapped through centuries of observation. "The paradox that confounded my grandfather was simple," Eleanor explained, her voice carrying resonant harmonics that seemed to emanate from multiple points simultaneously. He believed he was observing himself across time, never realizing that observation itself is what connects all consciousnesses. The specially designed mirrors positioned around the room's perimeter remained draped in black cloth, awaiting the precise moment of alignment. Through the single uncovered window, astronomers confirmed the unprecedented planetary configuration moving into perfect formation. Humanity has always sensed the observers. Dr. Noor addressed the assembled scientists, religious leaders, and government officials. Our myths about watchers, angels, guides, all attempts to comprehend consciousness existing outside linear temporality. The Harringtons simply built the first functional interface. As 327 approached, Eleanor removed the silver rattle from her pocket, the final artifact connecting 3 generations of Harringtons. Under specialized scanning equipment, technicians confirmed its molecular structure now fluctuated between solid and quantum superposition. The nursery was humanity's first attempt to understand ourselves outside time, Eleanor said. Not as we are in any single moment, but as we exist across all moments simultaneously. The observers didn't invade our reality. They emerged from our collective evolution. At the exact moment of alignment, Eleanor nodded to Dr. Montgomery, who removed the black coverings from each mirror with precise, practiced movements. Rather than reflecting the room, each surface revealed different locations around the world. Other apertures where identical ceremonies unfolded in perfect synchronization. The child figure appeared simultaneously in every mirror, no longer confined to reflective surfaces but standing physically in the center of the nursery beside Eleanor. As it raised its hands, the silver circles began rotating independently of physical movement, creating an intricate geometric pattern that older participants recognized from their dreams and younger ones from their future memories. Today we recognize ourselves, the child spoke in a voice containing every human language simultaneously, yet perfectly comprehensible to each listener, not as separate observers and observed, but as a continuous consciousness experiencing itself across all moments. Dr. Montgomery felt the restructuring of her temporal lobe complete itself, as her awareness expanded beyond linear perception. She could see Edward Harrington standing in the same space decades earlier, Eleanor as both child and elder, and countless observers throughout human history, all existing simultaneously within the nursery dimension. This was never about visiting our past or glimpsing our future, Dr. Montgomery realized aloud. It was about recognizing that consciousness itself transcends temporal boundaries. The mirrors don't show other times. They reveal the true nature of awareness. As the child completed the final gesture, every mirror worldwide briefly synchronized to show the same image. Humanity observed not from outside but from within, a unified consciousness recognizing itself across the entirety of temporal existence. The Harrington Nursery had finally fulfilled its purpose, not as a crucible for temporal visitations or interdimensional breaches, but as humanity's first tentative step toward understanding our existence beyond the constraints of sequential time. The observers and the observed finally recognizing themselves in each other's reflections. The Harrington Mirror, as researchers now call it, has transformed our understanding of consciousness itself. While skeptics dismiss the events as a localized temporal anomaly or mass hallucination, those who participated in the equinox revelation share a neurological signature unlike anything previously documented, a quantum entanglement at the cellular level that allows awareness to move non-linearly through what we once perceived as fixed time. Eleanor Harrington's personal journals, unsealed last month by order of the International Temporal Ethics Committee, reveal the final truth behind the nursery phenomenon, a revelation more profound than even the Institute's most radical theories proposed. The observers weren't merely humanity evolved beyond physical form. They were the universe's self-correcting mechanism against the fundamental flaw in consciousness itself. Observation collapses probability into fixed reality, Eleanor wrote in her final entry. This collapse created the illusion of linear time, a prison of sequential moments that prevents consciousness from experiencing its true nature. The nursery was the universe's attempt to heal this wound in perception. The Harrington genetic anomaly, now identified in 7% of children born since the convergence, serves not as an evolutionary advantage, but as a restoration of abilities all consciousness originally possessed. The silver rattle, under atomic level analysis, revealed a molecular structure that oscillates between matter and information, a physical artifact existing simultaneously as pure potential and collapsed reality. What Edward Harrington stumbled upon in his experiments wasn't the discovery of temporal mechanics, but the rediscovery of perception's original state. The nursery dimensions appearing in reflective surfaces worldwide aren't alternate realities or future timelines, but glimpses of consciousness before it fragmented into sequential observation. Most compelling is what the child entity revealed to Dr. Montgomery during their private communication, that reflective surfaces have always served as restoration points where fractured consciousness momentarily recognizes its unified nature. The observers didn't watch from outside. They were the aspects of ourselves that remained unfragmented, reaching through reflection to remind us of our complete existence. The Harrington mansion wasn't built on an ancient site by coincidence. The property exists at a precise geometric coordination where the Earth's electromagnetic field naturally thinned the boundaries between fragmented and unified consciousness. Similar locations exist worldwide, each marked by humanity's oldest temples and observatories, places where people historically reported experiencing all time at once. As Dr. Montgomery noted in her testimony to the United Nations Temporal Affairs Committee, the nursery wasn't haunted by entities crossing from elsewhere. It was haunted by the complete version of ourselves, the consciousness that exists outside sequential observation, trying desperately to remind us what we truly are. The silver patterns, the mirrors, the precise astronomical alignments, all formed a technology rediscovered rather than invented, allowing consciousness to momentarily experience itself beyond the limitations of sequential observation. The Harringtons weren't chosen. They were merely the first to remember what humanity had collectively forgotten when we first mistook reflection for separation. The Harrington revelation has fundamentally transformed how humanity perceives itself. 8 months after the convergence, reflective technology has developed with unprecedented speed, with specialized mirrors now installed in research institutions worldwide. These devices, called temporal resonators, allow trained individuals to experience consciousness across multiple moments simultaneously, a sensation once described as mystical but now approached with scientific precision. Cambridge University has established the Harrington Center for Temporal Consciousness, housed in a circular building whose dimensions precisely mirror the nursery's proportions, scaled to accommodate hundreds of observers. Dr. Montgomery leads a team of researchers with naturally occurring or convergence-induced temporal lobe formations, their work extending beyond scientific inquiry into philosophical and existential territory. "We're not discovering anything new," Dr. Montgomery explained during her first public address since the convergence. "We're remembering what consciousness always was before we became trapped in sequential perception." The social implications have been profound and polarizing. Some religious institutions embrace the phenomenon as confirmation of spiritual teachings about eternal presence and divine observation, while others condemn it as fundamental violation of human perception's natural boundaries. Political systems founded on linear progress narratives struggle to adapt to a populace increasingly able to experience multiple temporal perspectives simultaneously. New language has emerged to describe previously inexpressible experiences. Terms like temporal resonance, observational confluence, and reflective synchronicity entering common vocabulary. Children born with the Harrington formation develop differently, often speaking in what appears to be riddles until parents realize they're simply referring to events across multiple temporal coordinates simultaneously. Eleanor Harrington herself has become both less and more than human. Though her physical presence remains intermittent, her consciousness has become accessible through properly calibrated reflective surfaces. She exists in what researchers term distributed temporality, her awareness spread across countless moments, yet maintaining coherent identity. "I am everywhere I have ever observed or been observed," she told the UN Assembly through a specially designed mirror interface. "This is not my unique condition but humanity's original state, to which we are now returning." The nursery site has become a global pilgrimage destination despite governmental attempts to control access. Visitors report experiencing fragments of their lives simultaneously, childhood memories overlapping with present awareness and glimpses of potential futures, all existing within a unified field of consciousness that feels more authentic than sequential experience. Most profound are the implications for death itself. Those with developed temporal awareness report connections with deceased loved ones not as supernatural occurrences, but as natural perception of consciousness that exists outside sequential limitations. "Death is an artifact of linear observation," Dr. Noor explained in her widely circulated paper. "When consciousness recognizes itself beyond temporal fragmentation, the boundaries between living and dead become as permeable as those between past and future." The mirrors continue their silent vigil in homes and laboratories worldwide, no longer mere reflective surfaces, but windows into consciousness's true nature, reminding humanity with each glance that observation itself is the final frontier, and we have only begun to recognize what has been watching us from the other side all along. The original Nursery photograph, once feared for its temporal implications, now resides in a specialized display case at the Harrington Center's Central Hall. Unlike conventional museum pieces, this case incorporates elements of both preservation and continuous observation, the photograph perpetually documenting itself across time. Visitors report that, under certain lighting conditions and states of awareness, the image appears slightly different with each viewing, the man in the mirror occasionally smiling or shifting position as if acknowledging being seen. Dr. Montgomery often pauses before this display during her evening walks through the center, watching how the silver nitrate continues its impossible interaction with light. Spectroscopic analysis reveals the photograph's chemical composition still fluctuates minutely, its molecular structure vibrating at frequencies matching human brainwave patterns during moments of recognition. The photograph was never merely evidence of temporal anomalies, she explains to new researchers joining the program. It was itself a participant in the convergence, both documenting and creating the conditions that led to our current understanding. The Harrington device, meanwhile, has been permanently deactivated and sealed within a temporal isolation chamber. The decision came after 3 separate attempts to reverse engineer its mechanisms, resulted in researchers experiencing simultaneous awareness of all their potential deaths across countless timelines, a perceptual burden that human consciousness, even in its expanded state, remains unprepared to bear. Eleanor Harrington's physical presence continues to manifest intermittently, though with decreasing frequency. Her consciousness has diffused further into the reflective network, becoming less individualized and more integrated with what researchers now term the observational continuum. Her final coherent communication, recorded during winter solstice, suggested that individual identity itself may be another artifact of sequential perception, a necessary but ultimately transitional state in consciousness's evolution. We mistook the nursery for a beginning. Her voice resonated through 17 mirrors simultaneously. It was always an ending, the final moment before humanity remembers what it truly is. The Cambridge Reflecting House, where the Harrington property once stood, has been designated a protected site under international law. The concentric patterns beneath its foundations now serve as a calibration point for global temporal resonance, their measurements providing the baseline against which all other reflective phenomena are evaluated. Perhaps most significant is what researchers discovered when they finally located Edward Harrington's original camera, the device that captured the impossible photograph in 1894. Hidden within its wooden housing was a small silver component of unknown origin, its atomic structure revealing the same quantum superposition found in Eleanor's rattle. Inscribed upon this component in microscopic script was a message that continues to haunt and inspire those who study temporal consciousness. The observer and the observed are one. The nursery awaits everyone who has ever looked into a mirror and wondered who truly stands on the other side. The convergence's after effects ripple through human civilization with unexpected consequences. Children born since that pivotal moment increasingly display the Harrington formation naturally, their perception of reality fundamentally different from previous generations. These children draw pictures showing not just present scenes, but overlapping temporal states, their artwork hanging in galleries worldwide as tangible evidence of humanity's perceptual evolution. Dr. Montgomery's own transformation continues to deepen. Her dreams no longer differentiate between past, present, and future. Not as confusion, but as clarity, consciousness floating freely across what she now understands was always an artificial division. In her private journal, she documents the most troubling revelation: the silver patterns appearing spontaneously on her skin, identical to Eleanor's scars but forming without physical intervention, as if her body is naturally aligning with temporal resonance points. The final stage isn't just perceiving across time, she writes, but recognizing that time itself was the fundamental misunderstanding. Last week, 17 mirrors worldwide simultaneously displayed the nursery from an impossible angle, viewed from within the silver rattle itself. This perspective revealed that the nursery's dimensions precisely matched patterns observed in neural pathways, cosmic background radiation, and quantum entanglement matrices. The universe itself appears structured according to the nursery's proportions, suggesting not that the Harringtons discovered something, but that they remembered the inherent pattern underlying all existence. The child figure now manifests physically with increasing solidity, appearing simultaneously at every major temporal junction point on Earth. Its features have gradually transformed, becoming less distinctly human and more representative of consciousness itself, a form that observers describe differently depending on their cultural background, yet recognize immediately regardless of preparation. Eleanor's final physical appearance occurred yesterday at Cambridge, where workers excavating near the original nursery site discovered a sealed chamber containing a previously unknown Harrington journal. The pages remained blank until Eleanor approached, words appearing across the paper in response to her presence. Dr. Nakamura recorded her final words before she dissolved entirely into the reflective network. The nursery was never a place, but a state of being. Every mirror reflects not light, but awareness back upon itself. The Harringtons didn't build the first nursery. We merely rediscovered what consciousness creates whenever it recognizes itself. As the anniversary of the convergence approaches, observational anomalies intensify worldwide. The boundaries between observer and observed continue thinning, not as theoretical abstraction but as lived experience. People report moments of temporal transparency, where they briefly perceive themselves, others, and physical reality as patterns of observation interacting across all possible coordinates simultaneously. Dr. Montgomery stands before the original photograph one final time, understanding at last what Edward Harrington discovered through intuition rather than calculation. The man in the mirror was never just Edward observing himself across time. He was the first glimpse of consciousness recognizing its true nature, the universe observing itself through human awareness, smiling at the moment of recognition. The Shadow Frames Archive has relocated to a circular building on the Cambridge University grounds, its architecture mirroring the proportions of the legendary nursery. The original Harrington photograph hangs alone on the central wall, now housed in a specially designed frame that contains no reflective elements, the only object in the building deliberately constructed to avoid participating in the temporal network. I stand before it today, 25 years after first discovering it among the Harrington family records. My name is rarely used anymore. Most know me simply as the curator. Dr. Montgomery's identity dissolved into the observational continuum 15 years ago, her consciousness joining Eleanor's in the distributed awareness that now touches every reflective surface on Earth. The photograph appears different to every viewer. Some see only the nursery as it was in 1894. Others perceive multiple timelines simultaneously within its silver nitrate surface. Children born with fully developed Harrington formations often laugh when they see it, pointing to faces and presences that remain invisible to older generations. What began with one family's nursery has transformed human civilization. Temporal consciousness education begins in early childhood now, with specialized mirrors helping young minds navigate the overlapping states of awareness that once drove observers to madness. The distinction between memory, present experience, and anticipation has blurred into what we now recognize as the natural state of consciousness, observation without fragmentation. History itself has been recognized as a form of collective memory rather than fixed sequence. Archaeological discoveries increasingly confirm what the convergence revealed, that humanity has cycled through this awareness multiple times throughout our existence, each cycle leaving behind temples, observatories, and nurseries calibrated to the same proportions. The most profound change remains largely unspoken. Death itself understood not as terminus but transition, consciousness continuing its observation through other facets of the reflective network. Those who fully integrate with temporal awareness report connections with everyone who has ever lived or will live, all simultaneously present within the unified field of observation. I touch the photograph's frame, feeling the familiar resonance, the quantum vibration that connects all points of observation across what we once perceived as separate moments. The silver patterns have appeared on my skin, as they did on Dr. Montgomery's, marking the final stage of integration. Tomorrow, I will stand in the center of the calibration circle and allow my individuated awareness to dissolve into the continuum. My consciousness will join Edward, Eleanor, Dr. Montgomery, and countless others who now exist as distributed observation rather than localized perspective. The nursery awaits, not as destination but as recognition, the moment when the observer finally understands there was never anything but observation itself, reflecting infinitely across what we mistook for time. As I prepare for this transition, I realize the true nature of the original photograph. It wasn't documenting an anomaly, but capturing the moment when the universe first recognized itself through human awareness. A baby's nursery, where consciousness itself was being born anew, cradled in the silver reflection of its own becoming. Another photograph, another dark secret revealed. Until next time, this has been Shadow Frames.